And a good Monday to you all out there. Derek Pollacchi in for another edition of the Pollacchi Zone. Happy to have you with us along for the ride, wherever you're listening. Being safe, being healthy with what we're going through right now, as certainly interesting times for all of us as we get used to what we're going through right now, and it is different, and obviously it affects many things, from businesses to schools to universities, and what we talk about here, of course, is sports. And with that, we're going to touch base on the subject today, not get into the nitty-gritty about what it is and effects to healthy people in particular, not healthy people. That's not what we're getting at here. My guest today is my good friend, Associate Athletic Director and Head Athletic Trainer at Sul Ross State University, Billy Ray Laxton. Billy, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me and talk about an important subject.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
For sure.
Yes, sir.
Billy Ray, classes at Sul Ross State have been moved online. Sports canceled across the board. Student athletes, coaches, athletic trainers, SIDs, broadcasters, the like that work in sports are all suddenly hit with a new reality. What are your thoughts on this?
It's almost biblical, huh? Yeah. It's a deal where whenever this first started happening, it just kind of just popped in my head. Game 5 back in the NBA Finals of '97 when Jordan had the flu, okay, and he was brought out in this heroic type of effort to win Game 5, to send it to 6, and keep the series going. Chicago Bulls versus the Jazz back then, and it was one of those deals. In fact, it was called the flu game, and he actually was recovering from the flu. He didn't actually have the flu, so he wasn't. He didn't have a fever, so he wasn't contagious, or they wouldn't have been allowed to let him play. They had rules back then just for that very real. But I mean, everybody remembers how fatigued and how drained he was. I guess he started off okay, then all of a sudden it looked like, he didn't look like he was moving very well. So these things have just conjured up all kinds of images from the past, whether it be the SARS or the bird flu or the Spanish flu or even something not too far away dealt with a different disease, but it was a neurovirus. Was AIDS and Magic Johnson,
Sure.
and no one wanted to play with him, and because of that movement in the late '80s, early '90s, that we got universal precautions, we got OSHA rules, we learned that transmission wasn't through all the body fluids, so sweat was actually safe, and so these things just kind of came together, and I've been thinking a lot about what we're going through, and it's amazing the efforts that our governments and our professional societies are trying to do to prevent the spread, and I think that's been warranted, obviously, but a big change in life, just as you noted.
It's not my job here behind this microphone to give an opinion on this based on other stuff. That's not it. I'm just here to allow people to be able to see different aspects of what's going on. I'm going to tell you to be safe. I'm going to tell you to be healthy. I'm going to tell you to listen to the experts, because that's the best we got.
Sure.
So with that, you've been in this profession and you've worked in the medical field for a long time. There's been stoppages, particularly in sports, is what we're getting at here, due to the spread of disease before, and you've brought up some of those. How does what we've experienced in sports, just over these last few weeks compared? Oh, yeah.
Well, this is probably the response that we're seeing has been a compilation of all the responses in the past. In the early 1900s, when we had the Spanish flu, there really wasn't any campaign or response other than, get out and get fresh air. Well, and the Spanish flu really was devastating to the United States. But things like the Asian flu, they started noticing things that did with like military encampments or barracks and any other institutional settings, whether it be conferences or summer camps or what have you. They saw that flu, that Asian flu, really went rampant, and then it died down. And then in the fall of '57. It kicked back up because everybody went back to school. So the learning thing was we can't have big groups together because these flus, and they're all different types of flus, different strains, that spread like wildfire because humans touch humans. Humans don't always wash their hands, and sometimes, we're taught to be tough. We go to work with a fever because we can't miss work. We have a work ethic. And so that's the biggest thing. I would say that all of them, even the bird flu, the swine flu, had a big influence on, if not canceling, but delaying or postponing world events like the World Cup, the Olympics, international tennis. Soccer is probably the biggest one. FIFA, they in '09, whenever we had the swine flu going on, they had to do a lot of moving of games, whether it by date or by venue, meaning moving them out of places that had a big problem with infection rates of the swine flu, and even going on to SARS. SARS is a norovirus that's a related influenza, and so the women's FIFA World Cup actually had to be moved out of China, and SARS was a big concern right before the Olympics, in the '04 Olympics, which were in Athens, and so these things had to be noted and planned for, and the big world is, the WHO, the World Health Organization, is the one that writes a lot of the policy, and their perspective is for the globe, whereas the CDC is they take in sight of what the WHO says, but they're really worried about the United States and our territories. And they've all came up with a pretty much generalized list of what you should do to prevent and try to minimize the effect of spread.
And when we're talking about spread, it's numbers. Mm-hmm. And you and I work in sports. Mm-hmm. And we can crunch the numbers all we want, sending a baseball team or a softball team or, yes, a smaller tennis team. But you're talking about going across state, maybe across state lines, seeing other people, other teams. You can do the numbers in your head. I remember thinking about the NCAA and March Madness. I think it was, through Division 1, 2, and 3, you're talking about 187 teams, close to that. In the middle of March, the beginning of March, all going across the country from different states all over, and that, when you think about it, was a scary thought, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at it now, and again, I said I wasn't going to give opinions, but this is more of I think this is less of opinion and more of just a thought that, knowing what we know now and what we didn't know then when we made those decisions, that some people at the time were not in favor of, I think we got it right?
No, I would. Yes, you're totally right on that. I think, hindsight's always 20/20, and so having the foresight back then, other than these agencies like CDC or WHO, everybody's going, "Oh, it can't be that bad, or it can't be that contagious." And turns out, yes, it was exactly what they were thinking. Even though in the United States, our numbers haven't got to where people are like, oh, this is scaring me. It's their numbers that are significant and they're trending, and that's what they're trying to do, is flatten that curve, if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah, and in the big scheme of things, and this sounds so trivial, but if you have under 500 deaths, is that really that big of a deal when you're considering like the actual generic flu that kills 30,000 a year? Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but the potential is, and the way this disease was trending as far as its transmission, we could have really went way, way bad if we'd had all these events you just described, and it would have been horrific. And so these people had to make hard decisions, and luckily they made some good, right decisions.
Quick break. When we come back, we're going to get to our second part with Associate Athletic Director and Head Athletic Trainer at Sul Ross State University, my good friend Billy Ray Laxton. We're going to talk about more specifically Sul Ross sports in general and our student athletes on the other side. Second half with my good friend Billy Ray Laxton, Associate AD and Head Athletic Trainer at Sul Ross State University. Now, Billy, you're around these players, these kids, these student athletes more than I am. What are they thinking right now?
You know, that's a very good question, especially when it relates to not only their sport, but their academic careers and, you know, what are we going to do next, you know, and think about this. Some of these kids were already, you know, in the know when 9/11 happened. And now they're dealing with this, and this is the kind of the social things and stressors that the psychologists talk about. And mental health is going to be a huge, and has been a huge topic in NCAA. But you know, with this group, it's going to be even more. And not to say that other groups, demographics, are going to have some. Maybe mental depression with being all cooped up for isolation and everything, but you know, these kids have really seen it and been through it all, so to speak. And you know, even if they were you know, just 1 or 2 years old, they realized there was something about 9/11 and all the things that have happened since that time. So these kids, and most particularly our kids at Sul Ross State University, we've had a few people tested. Nobody has tested positive. Most of them are out of town. They're not even here. And, you know, I don't know, and I can't speak to like their immediate families and, you know, what they went home, you know, because some of them come from Houston and such and other big social hubs or population hubs. That for the most part, they've been lighthearted, and you know, the ones that I've had in class we're getting online and we're talking to each other, and I think for the most part, we are looking at this as still a positive thing. You know, their reality, if you will, is they're used to being online all the time, and it's. Their social interaction is based on that texting with their phone. So, yeah, I think they're dealing with it a lot better than we think. But there are going to be some topics, you know, that once we get back to a better normal, that we'll have everything going.
For sure. And when we started the interview, Billy, I started with classes moved online. We know about sports across the board. Student athletes, they're not playing. Coaches aren't coaching. Athletic trainers, you're not taping ankles. Nope. You're not looking at players. SIDs, I'm not writing stories. I'm not broadcasting. I'm not tabulating stats. Broadcasters, Locke Hoover over there, he's not talking sports right now. They're high school-wise, because high school's affected with this too.
Oh, yes,
I mean, it's all across the country. We're not some standalone case. And the likes of people that work in sports aren't currently doing that right now. Having said that, my job, your job, goes on. Sports may have stopped for the moment, but there's still stuff to do.
Oh, yeah.
What are you doing?
Well, the main thing that I worked on today is our next campaign of getting all our compliance and medical forms to the kids and having them start filling them out. That it just helps with them giving them something to do. We are doing health checks on during our original spring break. We had 3 young people have surgery, so we're checking up on them, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, adding to their rehab information, trying to make sure they're doing well, trying to keep up with their progress. We'll actually had a kid take a picture of making sure he can bend his knee to 90 degrees because at week 2 post-op, that's where he's supposed to be. So he had to prove it to us by a picture. I would say that the next thing for us will be probably rehashing anything that the NCAA wants us to do since we have the time. One of that is involves the Harrington case. This was about concussions, to make sure that we are completely compliant with all concussion education, training for the coaches, our processes of diagnosis and rehabbing a concussion, that we are going to be right spot on with the NCAA. Something else that we're doing, and this is all about preparing for the fall, because in our heart that's where we want to be, is ready for the fall. Getting all the necessary things in line, whether it's equipment, recruiting student athletic trainers, you name it. We're trying to work on those, and we have a little checklist that we're going right down. Anya Malock and myself, and we're really, really trying to make sure that is okay. And of course, there's in the backdrop, issue of our new AD, whoever that may be, plus a new president, whoever that may be. So those are things that we're kind of working towards. I will tell you that a mass physical where we have everybody come in and do a physical, we may not do that.
Right.
Okay. This is just a preventative deal. But we get back to playing sports, we may encourage them to go ahead and do this at home. If we're going to do it here, we may do it by only appointments. Yes, that slows it down a little bit. But that just reassures that we're not going to have anything come in and have that bug spread all through our athletic population.
The NCAA is giving athletes from this year their year of eligibility back. Just to let people know, that does not, yes, the technical basketball season didn't end with the tournaments, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, they do not get their year back. Basketball players do not.
Yeah, they had their season.
Their seniors are graduated. They can't come back. Okay. Having said that, baseball, softball, tennis, cross country, the likes of the spring sports get their year of eligibility back. The Tim Johnsons, who are seniors, Gabriella Raimondi on softball, they can come back, but they would obviously have to be graduate students or something of the like. So what do you say to that? Number one, it's great that the NCAA did that. That's the right move. I think we all agree on that. But what do you say to that about the seniors that maybe didn't necessarily plan on continuing their education?
Well, that's true. It is a deal where it's an opportunity. Okay, they can have the opportunity to complete that senior year that they dreamed of, and they can start on a postgraduate degree, or they could do a undergraduate certification, like teacher certification, which in kinesiology we kind of push. But the whole idea is they get a do-over, if you will, and because we did play a few games, but it didn't amount to much, and not enough to, if they delayed, that we could say, all right, here's the conference champion. No, we didn't play enough like that. So I would say that most part, everybody would say that the waiver thing is a big deal for these seniors. I don't know how many are going to take advantage of it, because they may have already plans of, like, I was going to go to med school.
Right.
Yeah, or I was going to go do this internship for some big company, and I'd already worked on making it set up and have it for the summer and fall, so I don't want to do that.
Right.
So I couldn't give you the numbers or the percentages, but everybody's talking about it, and I think the kid that it was really in their heart, they maybe had a chance to set a personal best or a school record or a conference record, or they just cannot live without having that team camaraderie, they're going to come back.
Right.
So,
I mean, what is your advice? Because, again, this is a different time, and this is a scary time. We can say that. What is your advice to student athletes and their parents and families of student athletes that are experiencing something new to all of us? What do you say to those student athletes and their parents that, they should be gearing up for a game right now?
Yeah.
The family should be gearing up to watch their kids play online or listen or follow. And now all of a sudden, that light just goes out, and for the first time in a long time, nothing's going on.
Yeah, it's a big void.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the strategies that especially right now because of the social isolation, many of these kids are at home, so they need to take advantage of that. Being with mom and dad, siblings, cousins, friends down the road, these are opportunities to make the best of that situation. Now, again, we want to follow the CDC guidelines. You don't want to be in these situations where you're in less than 10 groups of. In fact, there are some stay in shelter orders in the state of Texas right now, actually. Yep. So these times are, I guess they're critical and they're on our minds and hearts, but time heals all. This norm is not going to be static. This is not what's going to happen for the rest of our lives. And we have to remember that. And yes, there will always be some new bug that comes along, but each time, and that's what I was kind of highlighting, whether from the Spanish flu, Asian flu, swine flu to today, these all taught us how to react. And that's why we have this big pandemic order to try to flatten the curve, if you will, the spread, and the more that we heed to it, the quicker it's going to be over. Right. A lot of people forget that when it gets hot, the viruses go away. It's other diseases may come, but heat kills viruses and can kill bacteria. So the best days are still yet to come.
Must look to the positives at the end of the day. As much as it's always easy to talk about bad news, because in some regards bad news tends to hang on longer.
Oh, I agree.
We got to look to the positives. And the positives, you can see some of these athletes, they get to rest, recover. I'm sure a lot of them are enjoying that. I'm sure they want to be on the field. Oh, yeah. Let's get that out there, obviously. But they get to recover. Mm-hmm. What other positives are you seeing from this that we can take away?
Yeah, the wear and tear or the grind on even on a 21-year-old is still substantial. So you're right on the recovery. There are some guys and girls that are going to use this opportunity to really buckle down and get GPA up.
I was going to bring that up. Yes,
this is going to give them that boost that they need for self-confidence in the classroom. It is also giving them an opportunity to look at, like, what am I? Everybody wants to play. Just like you said, they want to play. They don't want, but what do I need to do to be better? And, because sometimes it's wham, bam, and you never get to think about those things. And now that it's took away from you for a little while, they get to rehash that. And, they can start thinking, how can I be a better teammate? How can I be a better batter? How can I be a better kicker? Or you name it. And they're going to get those opportunities to think about it. And there might be some that go, I had my time in the sun, hanging up the cleats. Yeah, it could happen that way. But a lot of them are going to rehash everything, and I think it'll make them more hungry. Yeah. So that's what I think.
Your big thing as an athletic trainer is keeping athletes healthy. Mm-hmm. And in this, we're trying to keep people healthy. We're not taping ankles and, doing MRIs and whatnot. But in your expertise in that regard, what can people do?
No, it's going right back to what you hear on TV. It's dealing with the flu. Just think of that. I don't want to get sick. Well, let's stay away from each other if we can. If we have to get out, but get right back in. That's isolation is, we mentioned it could cause some blues, but it also causes no spread of the germs, okay? And then the universal precautions, and this is where the hand washing, covering a cough. If you have a fever, don't go out and be amongst the public. Stay home. Get well. The deal about hand washing, a lot of people keep thinking about, I got to have that fancy this or that, the HEPA-Cleanse or the Germ-X or anything. Soap and water. And doing it for a good 20 to 30 seconds with warm to hot water is just effective in any of those things.
Quick question to jump on that, though, because there's many different kinds of soap. Yeah. You get those ones where it's got the lotion in it. Does it have to say antibacterial on it?
No, sir. No.
Okay.
It has
I was
to be,
interested in that myself.
Yeah, you just want to be clean. And then you want to make sure when you wash your hand that all the surfaces are dry. And if you use a paper towel, throw it away. Mm-hmm. If you use a cup towel or a towel, in the dirty clothes. Wash your clothes. Lysol and all those anti-germ sprays do not hurt. You can use them. But if you don't have the money or you can't get to the store because everything, 10% bleach is just as effective. Wipe down your surfaces, and in fact, I would say that 10% bleach is what we use in ambulances to clean them up. So I think it's probably okay for your house.
Billy, I bet you cannot wait. I've said it 1,000 times already in this interview. I bet you cannot wait until the time comes where you can tape another ankle. Right?
Oh, my gosh, yes. Or just to go look at an athlete, like, hey, put my arm around them. Whatever it is that we are kind of forbid from doing right now is kind of like our human nature.
Yep.
Sports brings out the very best in you, and the nice qualities is always being a human to a human, taking care of people, always saying, good job, great game, shaking hands, high-fiving. Those are all the good things.
A day will come where there is sports again.
Amen.
And we will be there. Billy Ray Laxton, Associate AD, Head Athletic Trainer at Sul Ross State University. Thank you for taking the time, my friend. You be good and you be healthy, okay?
You do the same. Amen.
And we'll see you next Monday right here on the Pollacchi Zone. Be good, be healthy, and we'll see you on Monday.